Hey everybody, welcome back to Hot Takes and Deep Dives. You know me, Jess, and I am here with fan favorite of the pod, Emerson Collins, widely known from the People's Couch. Hey Emerson.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. I have hot takes and let's dive deep.
Well, the past 2 days have been quite a whirlwind. Would you call this a scandal?
Yes, I would. Absolutely. Yeah, no, I feel like we've been on this slow journey to like meta reality experiences, and this is like the furthest deep into like production that we've been so far,
Yes.
and I think absolutely qualifies as scandal.
Which scandal was more fun? This, which is ongoing, and listeners, we're going to really break everything down, and I have some audio clips that hopefully I'll be able to have time to insert into the podcast so you can actually hear what we're referring to, and we're going to give you all the quotes and everything. But Emerson, in your opinion, which scandal was more fun to unpack? This one about the Vanderpump Rules editor, or the Lala 50 Cent Fofty scandal?
Okay, Lala Fofty was hilarious, but that didn't feel like new and interesting. This to me is way more scandalous because I'm obsessed with how reality TV is assembled, the line between performative, personal producing, actual producing. You know, this is so deep in the nuts and bolts of how these shows are actually assembled and how the shows are guided into like what we think as audience members is crafted by a team of people that guide a season towards those opinions, whether you perceive it or not. And this is so revealing of that. I think it's way more fun.
You think this is way more fun?
Yes.
So basically, this Vanderpump Rules editor named Bri Dellinger went on a podcast that's relatively new. There are only about 8 episodes of it. And Bri appeared on a couple of them. And on Sunday or Monday, I saw a screenshot of one of the episodes. Like somebody had screenshotted like 30 seconds of the podcast app playing an episode. And I was like, what's this? And I listened to it and it's definitely sounded extremely revealing. Pretty shortly after, like definitely in under 24 hours, the 2 episodes that she had guested on were pulled offline and this was now making news. So I guess just to backtrack, I think that you can actually give some insight into the job of a reality TV editor. I mean, like this is the person who puts together the video clips with the music. You know, they shape how all of the raw footage is seen.
Within like the editing of a reality show, there are the editors, there are the story editors, and then of course the producers. While they film a reality show, essentially there's someone cataloging every day of every shoot, like tagging, this was discussed, this was said, this person did this stupid thing. They make notes and then they're all filed. And then that way, when they go to craft a story, they can keyword search, pull up relevant days and clips. And as they get later in the season, we can go back to when something was first mentioned. We have the clips that go with that. And so to craft main stories, they are tagging and pulling and then dividing that out of how they want to guide that story through a season. There's also like the bin of, oh, this happened and this is funny. Pulling bins related to individual people, related to individual stories that are assembling all of the pieces of the clips to then craft individual episodes and season-long story arcs. It's cataloging because you think about how many hours they shoot at a party some nights, and we get 20 seconds of the one thing they mentioned that's related to the big scene we're actually going to watch. Well, somebody watched all 4 hours of that party from all the cameras that were there to find everything interesting.
What's the difference between a story editor and I guess what this woman's title is, which would just be editor?
Well, so really what it is there's story producers and editors. So it's the story producers who, with the executive producers of the show, track the big stories we're going to tell through the season and decide which ones are going in which episodes. And so then they tell that editor, here's the pieces of what you're covering in this episode, assemble this story here. And then the editor is free to pull from like all the clips that relate to that and they pass it up to the producers who give notes. But it is where the editor, by 50 minutes to edit, oh, and here's this shitty thing and this shitty thing and this shitty thing, and another editor might not have used those. So they do have a lot of power. And so unless a producer says, that's too many shitty things of Scheana, you know, it goes with your bent on the episode.
Yep.
Now, if I could back up for a second, I feel like there's a really important piece of this scandal that impacts how it's being received separate from reality TV. That episode of Vanderpump Rules where they clearly edited an interview with Scheana with Scheana having a conversation with Stassi's younger brother, right?
Yes, Nikolai.
15, underage, and then interviewed Scheana talking about how young a guy she would date, was glaringly clear to the audience that those two things were not related. And it was assembled to make it seem related. And so suddenly giving a weird implication that Scheana would even go so far as to date somebody underage. People were understandably already angry about that. And I think that sits on top of this scandal.
Well, did you hear what she said about that? So the editor basically said, she did give the example from the other week at Stassi's engagement party. She admitted to manipulating the scene to make it seem like she was flirting with Nikolai. And she said that they had already had that footage of her like talking to Nikolai and they needed something to set it up. And so in the interview, they asked her if she had ever dated a younger guy. And Scheana just started telling a story about some random guy she met and later found out that he was only like 21. So Scheana didn't know that they were going to juxtapose the two things together, but the editors did.
Yes. Well, and what's weird, I think, about this scandal and why I think it's worth saying that it's that situation and sort of people's perception of how Sheena's been treated this season as like the OG cast member that basically launched the show that's now stuck trying to get this new trio into the show and having to be the one to tie the group together. And she's always been a bit of a punching bag for the show, which she invites with things she says.
I mean, she has gotten the same edit for 8 years. Like nothing has really changed.
Right. And there's two sides to that. One, she says and does things that invite that. And then also within a show, you cast the characters and your story producers guide a season based on your journey and what you're going through or not, and cast you in roles and pull your life to fit that story. What's interesting about this is that's not unique. That's every reality show. You can watch it on any show that has talking head interviews. Anytime somebody says, I don't know what she was talking about, they can use that in any situation for any conversation, and they will and do, whether that's what you felt in that moment or not. When you sign a reality TV contract, there's a paragraph that literally basically says we can misrepresent you, we can put words in your mouth, we can pull things out of context, we can lie about you in like legalese, and you sign that away. So you know that, and it always happens. But because it's so directly correlated to this specific circumstance where everyone thought that's so far beyond the realm of acceptable, what you just applied about this woman that we all love and love to hate and sometimes hate. And for that to be the inciting incident for this revelation that I think people who don't watch television the way we do aren't quite as aware of how the behind the scenes works, it's explosive.
Yeah. And not to mention all the other truly sadistic and point blank, very cold things she said, which like we're going to get into. I like all these quotes written down. So basically she went on this podcast. I want to ask you, like, once we get through everything, like, did she commit career suicide? Like, I do want to like explore that later, but some background on the editor. So she worked as an editor on Top Chef, Project Runway, and Below Deck Med. She's been an editor on Vanderpump Rules. She definitely worked on season 5, and she's definitely worked on a bunch of episodes this season as well. She says that she was a huge fan of Vanderpump Rules before she started working on it, and she just knew that she absolutely had to work on the show. So basically what happened was these two episodes, these two podcast episodes, like little clips of them started to leak on Twitter. And then the next thing I saw was Scheana tweeted Andy and said, "Hey, Andy, I've got some tea for you. DM me," which to me is a very strange tweet. I mean, I guess the two incidents are related. Like, how could this be a coincidence that Scheana is tweeting at Andy? But also, wouldn't she just call a producer? Like, why would she do this publicly?
Well, I feel like it's so representative of Scheana and why she ends up being a punching bag. It's like, because that is the dumbest thing. Like, if you need to reach Andy, unless you're like trying to make a scene, there's 8,000 other ways to do that. Even though I'm sure she's not on the like, I can text Andy directly list, but there are people, your bosses, your company, there are smarter ways to go. Even if this is what she was referencing, Because the danger for the Bravo celebrity is always doing something that upsets the network, even if you're in the right. You know, it's like, if that were me and that happened, I would have been like, they're going to get this pulled. I would have known immediately because, you know, it's like when they call Jeff Lewis's radio show and say, stop talking about that. Like, they're going to be upset this is out there. She definitely can't talk about this as an editor. And so I would have said, hey, this is happening, just FYI, and sat back and let the internet do its thing without my hands involved in it, like as the Bravo celebrity. Because then you stay in good with the network and you still get the benefit of people angry on your behalf.
Some interesting things that the editor said that aren't being picked up in any of these news articles, because I listened to the 2 episodes. So a couple of random things. Number one, she compared Raquel to Brittany and said Raquel is what people thought Brittany was or thought what Brittany might be. And that Raquel is the actual like sweet and innocent one, and Brittany is more calculated.
Right. I feel like that's just a level of like Raquel's newer to it. I think Brittany was that when she started out, but I think once you've done three seasons of a reality show or more, there's a little jaded, like you're always self-producing, even if you don't even have to be halfway intelligent to be aware of like, if I say this thing, that's going to become a thing. You know, and we see people self-censoring all the time for that. And I think it's just Raquel's like, I don't know, I'm here to shoot. What do you want to know? What's fascinating to me about the editor doing the interview at all is that there's an element of like, I want people to know how much I contribute to what it is you love, because they do so much. So many of the opinions we hold are a direct result of a story producer guiding us to feeling that way about that.
I'll tell you, people went back on her Twitter feed, and so much of what her feed is saying like, oh, I hope you watch my episode of Vanderpump Rules that's airing tonight. Because it's the one, you know, they get assigned like maybe like 4 episodes a year to edit. Like each editor will get like a handful. So I did notice that she was saying like encouraging people to watch quote unquote her episodes. She definitely gave off the air that she is wielding a certain sort of power, which she does have. The editors hold all the power.
And they do. I mean, obviously they all get network notes, and they talked about, you know, like the network decides who is and isn't villains in various seasons and various situations. What I find interesting is that this seems so shocking to people, but it's true of all the shows we watch. Like every group of editors on every show has like, you know, like the Scheana shit bin that she has. They have that for every cast member on every show. Just like, here's clips where they look terrible. Here's clips where they look great, depending on what we're doing this season. Vanderpump's a perfect example. For years, we didn't see those scenes of her manipulating people. And then the season where they started to show it, suddenly we were seeing all these clips we'd never seen before.
It reminds
demonstrated.
It reminds me of what's happening with Denise right now, how that all of a sudden they're showing her be a little rude to a waiter when ordering her tequila and all of that.
Yes. Because like all those Vanderpump clips were like in a vault for the years where we were treating her as the queen bee of the show. And then when the story was she's manipulative, suddenly there were clips that would have been really useful to support like Lisa Rinna saying, you told me to go say that. Oh, there is a clip of it.
I mean, the most infamous one I can think of is last year when they flashed back to an unseen clip of Camille confronting Vanderpump after the famous "and now we said it" scene with Taylor Armstrong. That's because that was never seen, and some editor remembered that. Like, holy shit.
Yeah. Well, I know. And now we've said it is like one of the most iconic lines of all of reality television. And here was this very important additional dialogue from that same scene that we had never seen. So part of my fascination with the audience reaction is like, I can't believe they did that. But the real thing is, they all do that. They do it for everybody and to everyone. And this example where they went too far in misrepresentation in a way that implies like illegal, disgusting behavior, you know, that's much more like the Atlanta rape allegation than just like you're being an asshole to somebody, Ramona. That's why it feels different. But this is the way reality television works. And she just shouldn't have told people.
She said, again, I'm just listing off a couple of bullet points that the news isn't picking up because I just found them interesting in these 2 interviews. So she said that Jax walks around saying that he knows all of the editors, but he actually has never met a single one, which is not shocking. She admitted that she requested to not have to edit the Jax and Brittany wedding episode.
That's hysterical.
Yeah, that I found funny. She talked a bunch of shit about Peter and Brett. Brett's one of the new guys, calling him awkward and thirsty. She said that Brett is really lazy and he wants like the fame without having to do any work. Referencing back to her like wielding this power, she did say like, well, I could put him in an episode if I wanted to.
Yeah, and that really is true.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will say a little bit to the like, who does and doesn't know the editors. You would have to really go out of your way to find and meet them. Like your worlds don't cross. Like even on when we did our show, there was like a wrap party at the end of the second season. That was the first time I met anybody that wasn't our like in-home producer. Now, I find what they do fascinating. So I'm like interested in the story editors and producers, and ours were really lovely. But there is a little bit of like, you wouldn't inherently have the opportunity to be friends with the people that work in post-production unless like through a party and you like go out of your way to build that relationship.
To that note, this is what's interesting. She went on to reveal that she loves Stassi and really wants to be friends with her. But she said that she blew her off at the premiere party that you're referring to, blew her off at the premiere party and didn't care about her. So she literally said, I was like, I'm going to be friends with Stassi. And that didn't happen. I met her at the premiere party and she doesn't care about me, nor does anybody. So like she does have this like self-awareness.
Well, and it is such a funny like thing to care about. Like it seems like a little bit of a bad idea to work on a show that you're that big a fan of. You know, it's like there's certain shows it would not be a good idea for me to work on. And I would know that because like there's no way I can be unbiased about like what's the good story. I'd be like, no, that person that I love said this terrible thing. Don't put it in. And somebody else needs to be like, no, they were being an asshole. Put it in.
One of the juicier things she said was she said that she created an Instagram account called Vanderporn that was solely filled with all of these clips of Scheana. It was like a compilation of all of the times Scheana would make like sexual remarks or like the times she's like moaning on camera. And she wanted to use that as one of those little, you know how they do those like quirky little, in the confessionals, they'll throw in like a little cartoony type thing. She wanted to like use this fake Instagram account in the show. And Bravo was like, it's like, no, they nixed it.
And also, that's just shitty. You know,
I know.
I feel like this is also revealing a little bit of the best of reality television producing and story producing is telling us what really happened in the most compelling way. You know, the least manipulation from the producers and the editors gives us the most authentic story. And we as the audience can feel that and see that. You know, at this point, we've all watched it long enough. We can tell when they're like pushing too hard at something or like filling time with something that wasn't that big a deal. And you can tell the people are like, this isn't that big a deal. So it's also a little bit of the more manipulative the editor, the worse they're doing their job, in my opinion. You want to tell the real story and make it the most like dramatic or most hilarious. You want to amp it in the direction of the truth, not attempt to create a fabrication.
I think what's happened is that I think it's possible that there just hasn't been enough story. And that's the issue.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that show is having a personality crisis this season, and their big swing for the season has failed for most people. You know, this new trio is not succeeding for a lot of the super fans of the show.
It feels completely fake to me. Like, actually, I was listening to Scheana on a podcast, and she had said that Dana only hooked up with Max the night before shooting the premiere episode, which to me says the entire thing is fake.
Yeah. I mean, and you know, there's always a little bit of toughness of introducing new people into an established anything. But this show really needed to try a big thing to see what they were going to do going forward. And they didn't find the right three people, I think, if we're being honest. And there's no way for casting to know till you start shooting. People seem great, seem like we've seen it on The Housewives, where like a housewife seems amazing. And then 2 episodes in, you're like, oh, she's boring and this is going to be bad. There's no way for them to know. But this was such a big swing and it's feeling really forced. Because this show started with this group of people who were like genuinely having sex with each other and cheating on each other. And like that was their actual lives. Like the Shakespearean drama of Vanderpump Rules was so authentic that fan base smells bullshit faster than any other to me.
Absolutely. I mean, to that point, like one of the things Scheana was saying was that basically, you know how the show is setting her up to be threatened by Dana and like jealous of Dana over these two guys, which like Scheana does not have, or nor did she ever have any interest in. I think she like briefly dated Max for real, but like that was it. She's basically saying that like she is threatened because Dana could potentially take her job. Like that's where the threat lies. And she's also pissed that they're showcasing Dana's comedy. It's like Dana's a person who, you know, did comedy a couple of times and now they're showcasing it on this huge television show. And now, you know, cut to 6 months from now, what is she going to be headlining the Laugh Factory or Caroline's on Broadway because of her following and the platform? Right. Whereas in the beginning, yes, it was a bunch of, you know, these servers trying to pursue careers in the entertainment industry. And now that they actually do have the successful careers in the entertainment industry, they're not showing them. And that is what Scheana is upset about. And that's what this whole like quote unquote justice for Scheana movement is about, started by Danny Pellegrino, because look, yes, they are showcasing, there is this favoritism towards Stassi, which we're going to get into. And she fully actually like admits to, and like, it's very interesting. We'll get into that in a second. But aside from Stassi's book, which is a huge success, Scheana herself has had a lot of success. She has a very successful podcast. Like she has great guests. She's got tons of ads and headlined a show in Vegas for 6 months. And she wanted to showcase that. In fact, she pitched a spinoff to production, which was basically following her to Vegas. And who knows, maybe they could have even incorporated the Vanderpump Cocktail Garden, and they just turned it down. So that's what she is threatened and pissed by.
Well, and I love that she just said that. I'm not threatened by her as a woman in pursuit of men. I'm threatened for my job on the show. Because if they did do the like Valley spinoff, she's not in one of the married couples. And if they went with like the younger cast, is she going to be like the grandma at SUR? And that's so like honest and real and what we love about Scheana. And it is a challenging thing because the shows are platforms for their other things, but like that's not what the show cares about. Like they don't care if you succeed at your outside things. And for better or for worse, because from the beginning, Scheana was the boy crazy homewrecker. Yes, she's so much more than that now, but it's like the show's still limiting her to that role because they have so many people and like they have people in those other places. Like, I don't want to watch everybody's podcast on this show. Right. Like, that's not Scheana, but I just mean like, great, we did Stassi's podcast from it, but like, I don't, as much as I love them and I love doing this one, like, I don't want to watch them make podcasts. You know, it's a weird balance for the creators. And it's like American Idol where they like, you know, you win the show and then your album fails. They're making a TV show. They don't care about whether you succeed or don't in your life outside of it. But not doing her Vegas show, not as a spinoff, but in the show just seemed silly to me because that's such a huge, fun opportunity. Like, take everybody to see Scheana show.
The thing that I really think they should have covered, and they did like a teeny tiny bit, is because she was freezing her eggs and going through this fertility journey, that is extremely relatable, extremely real, that they really should have dived more into.
They didn't because of Tinsley. And I bet that was at the Bravo level.
Wait,
because
what
we
do you
were
mean?
Doing that story on another show.
But they didn't show her they showed her frozen eggs for like a second and it became
I know,
a meme,
but we did like 4 episodes in Tinsley's life about her like frozen eggs. I bet that was a Bravo level decision of like, we're doing that story and we have Candy's surrogacy. Like, I don't know, but that's my guess, is that there's an element of where across the network are we telling what kinds of stories?
That's interesting. I actually didn't think about that at all.
I mean, who knows?
So you as a viewer, would you have been like, oh, they've already done this with Tinsley?
No, not at all. But I can just see that being a thought from someone further up the chain. If in the same year of seasons, we're telling that story.
Right.
Or who knows? Or they were like, maybe they filmed and talked about it and they were like, that doesn't fit in our, like, we're fighting. It feels like an older story. And this show has the youngest target audience. So maybe that was why.
She literally said, quote, if Scheana knows what's good for her, she'd befriend me because my favorite game is finding all of the embarrassing things that Scheana does and putting them all in. She said that, and she said her memoir should be called Death by a Million Embarrassments. That is just cruel.
It's also, I mean, it's so unnecessarily hateful.
Yeah.
Like, that's not, your job isn't to be a shitty person. Your job is to tell good stories. I mean, I'm sure she's not the only editor that has a person on a show somewhere that they particularly enjoy finding the worst moments of. But to say it that way demonstrates a callousness.
I mean, it sounds like she has an axe to grind.
Yeah, it feels like a personal vendetta.
I mean, Scheana is just like the most goofy. To me, Scheana is not calculated or callous.
She's so weirdly harmless.
Yeah.
Like there isn't anything like Scheana just wants to be liked and just wants to be loved. Like liked as a friend and loved as a person. And it's the naked demonstration of that is so endearing and also makes her the butt of jokes at the same time, which is why she's so compelling on television, because she can't help but show it. And that's why we love to watch her. And so to target that kind of person for like specific destruction says so much more about the editor than Scheana. Like if you were to list that franchise from like best person to worst person, Sheena's nowhere near the bottom.
Oh, no. No, of course not. Back to her like feeling, just coming off as bitter. She said, the cast really doesn't think or talk about us at all. I feel like they should totally want to be friends with me. I know about them. Oh, wait, maybe that's why they don't want to be friends with me, because it must be really creepy to talk to an editor who's been looking at your face like 50 hours a week.
But also, it's not that deep. These narcissists just don't really care about you. You do your job, they'll do theirs, and let's make a show. Like, it's not that deep. I'm sorry you want to be friends with these people, but, go hang out at Laurel Hardware. You'll find one. Like, they're around.
I mean, the thing with Nikolai, she said that with Stassi's brother, she was basically insinuating through the edit, almost like insinuating that Scheana's a pedophile, which to me, that's an insult to the audience. Like, we all know that it's a joke. Like, it's clearly a joke. Like, I remember when I was watching it, like, I was kind of like smirking at it because it was so clear that it was a joke. But I'm sure that there's some contingent of the audience that's like not in on it.
Right.
It's just strange. Like the fact that they intentionally did that. She said, we were watching the scene and they were like, okay, this is over the top, but how can we resist? So she says, I set it to funny music and I added a funny soundbite and that was it. She goes, we asked her in the interview, how young would you go? We just didn't tell her that it was for Stassi's brother's scene, of course.
Yeah, and I go to, if one person walks away believing that's true, then what you did was horrible. That isn't the same as making someone seem vain or stupid or mean or act like an asshole or like shifting a little bit to make something seem harsher than it was. It's implying something that everyone considers morally, legally repulsive to be true of a person it's definitely not true of. Like, it's inexcusable to me. Like, I just think it was bad that everybody let that slip through.
The worst part about it is that Scheana said when she was being interviewed that she was watching some show and between seasons the actor like grew, because it takes like years between seasons. I think maybe she was watching Ozark or something and she was like, oh wow, like he really sprouted up. And she said that out loud. She was just watching the show with her boyfriend and she said, wait, is that the type of thing that could be taken out of context? Like she said that like it's like fucking with her head.
Yeah.
Because now this is out there.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and that is the kind of thing. And it is what happens on these shows. And this subject and this instance was just beyond the pale of what any audience should like be okay with for misrepresentation.
Mm-hmm. I mean, what do you think this chick's next move will be? This Bri Dellinger. She said in the episode that she was coming back for next season. I mean, I can't see how they will have her back. Like, do you think somebody like that after this explosive of I guess just like violating any type of code of conduct between the production company? I mean, are editors just freelancers? Are they bound to a production company?
It depends on the company and the project and the network. They can be hired for a project and be an employee of the production company for the length of the contract. At lower levels, you can be a freelance employee, and you can freelance, quote, freelance from project to company to company. That's common, but they'd be an employee. I would imagine this violated some aspect of her employment contract on the show. I think with the size of this reaction, they may have to let her go. Mm-hmm. I don't think, honestly, it's long-term damage for her in the industry because there's another producer of a show somewhere who would say, you sound like a smart editor, let's hire you, do your job, and you don't get to do interviews or you're fired.
Right.
She's probably good at her job. And who reads the credits? Nobody's going to pay attention to what show she goes to next,
Yeah. And in fact, the episodes that she was referring to that she personally edited, which were the It's Not About the Pastor episode, which was actually one of my favorite episodes this season. And she said she edited the episode way back when, maybe it was like season 5, when Sandoval was like, said to Schwartz, he's like a battered wife.
Yeah.
Which was like another famous. I mean, she's obviously, working with great material. She's obviously a great editor because all of the editing on Vanderpump Rules is so slick and amazing. So yeah, I just wonder. So you don't think it is career suicide?
Not in any way, because all she did was say the quiet parts out loud. Like she definitely was feeling herself in this interview, and like the weird stuff about having opinions about the cast is like weird, but I don't think, but you do your job and do it well. Like somebody, if she can't keep this job, somebody else will hire her. Yeah, I mean, that's my real industry reaction.
Yeah.
Because what she did is not any different than from what everybody else does. I think the specific story this is related, because if that thing with the younger brother hadn't happened, we'd just be talking about an editor who likes finding shitty stuff of Scheana, but she can't do something Scheana didn't do, so that is her job. I think it's the story we're talking about that makes it more intense than it would be otherwise.
Mm-hmm. And what about just her talking shit about the cast members?
I mean, I feel like everybody in post-production on all show, I'm sorry, like that's everywhere.
No, but publicly like this?
No, that's the moron part. It's like that's what I mean. She said the quiet parts out loud. Like you say that at parties, you say it over drinks, you text it to your friends. You don't say it in an interview. She's
just an idiot who got in front of a microphone.
Yeah, she got ed up with like finally having the attention, which is a little bit what she seems to want by wanting to be friends with Stassi and, the cast. Because I would think most editors would be like, I don't care. I don't need to meet them. I do my job and I go home to my real life.
So one of the more interesting things she said, aside from all the Scheana stuff, was that Bravo basically has this edict that Stassi and Beau need to be featured in every episode because these are her words. She said Bravo deems them, quote, special heroes, which is a strange term, but regardless, basically saying that they are the golden children of Vanderpump Rules. Now, I feel like we see way more of Jax and Brittany than Stassi and Beau personally.
I think it's like it's when you talk about a show like who are the heroes, it's not even necessarily like literal hero, like the person you love. But I think if you go back to like, it's remembering across the franchise that like the big stars of the show were Scheana and Jax and Stassi before anybody else. For better or for worse, from the OG, like that's what exploded this show. Everybody else has grown since, but if you're running a mega franchise, it's like, but what are the threads we're hanging on to always for those original viewers? I think it's more in that speak than it is like that they need to be seen as quote unquote the heroes. I think it's just no matter what, you need to include their content is more what it's saying.
She said, I don't know if you remember this, a couple of weeks ago, there was an episode in which Jax and Brittany were not in. To me, like that really stood out. Like it was a notable absence. They just like were not in an episode. Same thing for Kristen. There were a couple episodes where Kristen was either not in, only in one scene in, and same for Lala. James is missing from the first half of the season, so I won't even like get into James. But she had said that, yeah, like after the wedding stuff, which was so heavy, Jax and Brittany, that they just wanted to see if they could do an episode without them. So it was just like experimentation. And they're getting paid the same thing no matter what, because they're not getting paid episodically. They're just getting a lump sum.
And I'd imagine it's also like now that the cast is so big and there's so many things, what does it look like if we like leave people out? Because this week we're focusing on this people. It feels like this season we're trying a lot of things towards the best plan for the future of this series. So I think we'll see a lot. The things that worked best from this year roll into next year. And it may be that we start dividing people a little more. And this is a very, this couple and their friends centric episode. And that one's a little more that, like more like a soap opera where like, oh, we're at the dinner party. And if you're not at the dinner party, you're not in this week's episode. It feels like that's trial stuff. And to see the reaction. Do people notice when certain people aren't there? Do they care? Can we get away with this? Can we not? Which I do think is in the benefit of the show to get at as it finishes this identity crisis.
What do you think Bravo and Evolution's the production company. What do you think Bravo and Evolution's response will be or should be to this whole mess?
I mean, if I think on the industry side, I think she's most in trouble for talking, not for what she said or what she did. And I think that's a big thing at Bravo. You know, they're really big on like not talking about production, not talking about anything behind the scenes, negotiations, don't reveal secrets, don't tell stories. So I feel like that's the thing that gets her in the trouble with the network. And then I think that what they say to the production company dictates her future there or not. But I don't know. I mean, I think she demonstrated she's a bit of a shitty person by feeling comfortable saying some of the things she said.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't be surprised if they sort of go, okay, but let's see if in a week, if anyone cares and remembers this woman's name.
But what do you think Bravo will say to the public? I mean, this story is in every news outlet. Well, do you think they'll make a statement?
No, I don't think they will. I think at most, if she's let go, that would happen. And then maybe Evolution would make a statement. I think as weird as it is a big story in our Bravo superfan base, it's not a real news story outside of entertainment fandom. And I think Bravo commenting gives it more weight than necessary and gives a lot of attention to the behind the scenes of how the shows are made. So if I were them, I'd say we don't. They decide with Evolution what's happening with her, and then Evolution, at most, Evolution says something. That's what I would do if I were Bravo.
It's interesting that they made, the original podcaster. I actually don't even know her name. I don't even remember the name of the actual podcast because I don't think it's going to continue to go on. There are only a handful of episodes to begin with. It's interesting that they made her pull these 2 episodes. It's like there's all this traffic going to these episodes that are now pulled offline.
Yeah.
That's got to be frustrating for the podcaster who's like, oh wow, like my shit's fine, is actually getting, to get publicity for a podcast is very difficult in general because there are so many out there.
Yeah.
So I just wonder how she's feeling, the actual girl who did.
I mean, I would imagine it's incredibly overwhelming to be receiving communication from either a production company or a network, because I would assume it was illegal. This individual violated a contract, and by continuing to share the contract privileged information, I'm sure it was a legal thing. But the flip side is, but their podcast name is out there and everywhere. So whatever they put up next, they've already got, like, it's still a win for the podcaster.
Mm-hmm.
They just need to crank out some more content real quick so that people that are going to look for it, subscribe and they get the big audience that it usually takes like a year and a half or 2 years to build.
I know. Any final thoughts on the Vanderpump Rules season is over. We're going to be rolling into the reunion.
Well, my big final thought is, like, it sucks for Scheana. I'm glad that, though, it demonstrated how many people love her as a figure, as a beloved.
But here's the thing. You know how you said it sucks for Scheana? In some ways, it must be validating for her, because like she always would say, or at least fans would say, like, it's like they have it out for her. And here's a producer saying, yeah, we actually do have it out for you.
Totally. Well, but I hope she's feeling the love of, like, being a beloved fool of a character that we all find endearing. I hope she's receiving that out of this.
And I am sure she is.
And that's a lovely silver lining. And then on the flip side, it's been so thrilling to watch it happen, because, like, since we're all stuck at home, there's nothing happening anywhere. And so anything exciting that happens online, I'm like, oh, something to fall into a wormhole about for an hour. Yay.
You're the best. I love you.
I adore you.
Emerson, what have you been working on? And I know that you have there's a big announcement coming out on Monday.
Yes. I'm so stuck at my home. Del Shores, my producing partner and work husband, and I have been writing away, and we are working on a giant benefit live stream that we will be announcing on Monday. So follow on my socials and you'll see all this stuff. But it's a very exciting event we're going to share with the world.
Awesome. Oh, you can't tell them what you told me?
Big stars, big things happening. You almost heard it here first.
Obama is in it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Where can everybody follow you online?
Instagram, Emerson Collins, Twitter at Actually Emerson. Y'all can find me. Share your thoughts.
Awesome. And you guys can follow me, Jess XNYC. Follow the show account, Hot Takes Deep Dives. Leave a 5-star review. And we'll see you next week. Thanks, guys.